The smell hit first, sanitized lemon over something rotting beneath. That should have been my clue. But I still smiled at the receptionist, like a fool believing she was just here for check-in, like I was boarding a plane. What I discovered next. Stripped the flesh from the moment, the lobby was all pale blues and bland pastels, designed for comfort, but I felt no such thing. The floor beneath my shoes was too soft, too quiet. Marissa's grip on my elbow tightened as I hesitated. I remember the way she said my name then, low, sweet, careful, like you'd speak to a child on the verge of a tantrum. Come on, Mom. It's just a quick consult. A checkup, she said. Just some routine paperwork. Tom hovered near the door, hand already on the knob, his face a tightrope stretched between guilt and escape. He avoided my eyes the entire time. By the time I noticed. The nurse in scrubs waiting with a clipboard, I had already walked too far inside to turn back without making a scene. My purse was gone, Marissa had it. Just so nothing gets misplaced, she'd said with a brittle smile that cracked like dry ice. Then came the pens. The signatures. And the silence. I hadn't said yes. I hadn't said anything. But I watched. As the nurse nodded like I had. Marissa handed over a folder thick with papers I'd never seen before. Tom glanced at his watch like it was all taking too long. Wait, I said, louder than I meant to. What is this? I thought we were seeing a doctor. Oh Mom, Marissa's tone sharpened, like she'd flipped a switch. Don't make this difficult. Her voice had no breath in it. No ache. It had already moved on. I don't understand. The receptionist smiled at me like she'd heard that 100 times before. The nurse had already begun clipping a laminated ID badge to my shirt pocket. Tom cleared his throat. We've got to go. Traffic. And just like that, they left me standing in that too quiet lobby, with a badge I hadn't agreed to, and a nurse I didn't know leading me down a hallway I didn't recognize. They took my phone, not with violence, no. Just with practiced reassurance and a form that claimed it was for safety and minimal disruption. I watched my lifeline slide into a drawer I couldn't reach, the way someone might slip a body into a freezer. I in the intake office, they inventoried everything, my wallet, my spare glasses, the little slip of paper with Dr. Leland's number. Gone. Signed away. I don't remember sitting. I don't remember agreeing. I just remember Nurse Janet's gentle hands pressing against my back as she guided me into a room that smelled of disinfectant and talcum. There was a second bed already occupied, by a woman who snored through the entire ordeal, her white hair rustling with each labored breath. She doesn't talk much, Janet whispered, like that was supposed to help. The door clicked shut behind her. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every second lay thick and hot across my chest like a cinder block. I stared at the ceiling, but it offered nothing. My roommate wheezed and rustled like dry leaves in the wind, and somewhere beyond the wall, I heard a television playing reruns with the volume turned too low to follow. I tried to catalog the betrayal like a lawyer might. Tried to isolate every moment it had gone wrong. But each time I followed the thread, it looped back to the same hollow echo. Power of attorney. Marissa's words rang out earlier that day when I asked what gave her the right. It's all filed. You signed it last year. I had signed something. A packet she brought with groceries, pretending it was a Medicare renewal. I didn't read it then. I trusted her, and now here I was. In this place. This, holding pen with floral curtains and plastic roses by the window. I counted the hours by the beep of the hallway monitor. One beep every 60 seconds. 60 minutes. In an hour. The hours did not pass. They accreted. They piled. When the breathing beside me deepened into the heavy, slack rhythm of true sleep, I slid my legs over the edge of the bed and pressed my feet to the cold tile. There were cameras. I had seen them. One above the nurse's station, one in the hall, blinking like it knew everything, but the door wasn't locked. It didn't have to be. Quietly, I pulled on the cardigan they'd folded on the end of the bed. The one thing they hadn't taken from me. I knew where they kept the phones. Intake office. Right drawer. I'd watched Janet lock it, then clip the key to a ring on her waistband. But during dinner, served at 5:30 sharp like we were toddlers or convicts, I'd noticed her switch the key to her cardigan pocket. Probably easier to access. She hadn't noticed me. I took the long way around. The hallway lights dimmed after 9 p.m., casting everything in a pinkish blue haze. I moved like I used to in the garden when the dog had dug a hole under the fence and I didn't want to startle him back out. The office door was closed, but not locked. I slipped inside, heart jackhammering in my ribs like it wanted out. It was exactly as I remembered. Desk. Filing cabinets. Lamp still on. And the drawer, blessedly, unlocked. My phone was in a padded pouch with my name on it. Still off. Still mine. I didn't waste time. I powered it up, the glow illuminating my hands. Like bones beneath skin. I had one number memorized. Not Marissa. Not Tom. I scrolled quickly, deleted call logs, muted ringer, checked for surveillance. Years of quiet habits kicked in like reflex. Point 3 rings. Then an answer. Male. Quiet. Alert. Eleanor? My breath. Caught. I don't have long. Are you safe? No. Not really. What happened? Marissa. She executed it early. No warning. No leverage yet. Silence on the other end. Then, do you want me to initiate the backup? I stared at the wall across from the desk, the peeling corner of a laminated poster on elder nutrition fluttering in the AC's breath. My voice was calm when it came. No. Not yet. But, I swallowed hard, heat rising in my face. I need to activate the contingency. After the call, I lay there in the dark, my pulse finally beginning to slow. The phone was back in the drawer. The hallway silent again. And Janet none the wiser, but sleep wouldn't come. Not after that. Instead, I stared at the ceiling and let my mind slide backward, 90 days, give or take. Back to when the birds still came to the feeder, and the hydrangeas bloomed blue. Back to the moment I should have seen the rot starting to spread. It began quietly. Most things do. The sun had barely touched the lawn when I stepped out that morning, shears in hand, dew soaking the hem of my robe. I loved this time of day, the stillness, the hush before the world remembered itself. My garden was my cathedral. Everything grew in neat, obedient lines. The tulips. The thyme. Even the roses had learned to behave. I just crouched near the begonias when the screen door creaked. Mom? Marissa's voice, too bright for this early. You outside again? I heard the rustle of grocery bags before I saw her. I didn't remember asking her to stop by. Then again, I didn't remember not asking either. I brought you the almond milk you like, she called. And the new vitamins. The blue bottle, not the red. I stood, brushing dirt from my knees. You didn't have to. Oh, I wanted to. She stepped down the porch steps, sneakers spotless, sunglasses perched perfectly on her head. Besides, I was already running errands. You looked so tired yesterday. Thought I'd check in. That word. Tired. She used it a lot now. As if fatigue were a diagnosis, a warning light blinking behind my eyes. She glanced at the shears in my hand. You really shouldn't bend so much. Remember what Dr. Singh said about your back? I smiled, tight-lipped. Dr. Singh also said I'm in excellent shape for 72. She didn't answer that. Just gave me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and said, let's put these groceries away, Inside, she moved through the kitchen like it was hers. Opening cabinets, rearranging. Tossing a few cans that were too old, wiping down a counter I'd just cleaned. She talked while she did it, about Tom's new client, about their refinance woes, about the cost of college if Ava didn't get a scholarship. I nodded at all the right places. Stirred the tea. But somewhere around the second mention of their mortgage rates, I felt it again, that slight pressure, like someone gently putting their hand between my shoulder blades. You know, she said finally, sliding the almond milk into the fridge, Tom and I were just talking about your place. My spoon froze mid-stir. She continued, too casual. It's a lot to manage. And the market's good right now. Really good. I set the spoon down slowly. You want me to sell? She backpedaled, hands up. No, not want. Just thinking. Exploring options. You've worked so hard your whole life. Why not relax a bit more? In someone else's house? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. In a place with less to worry about, she said, stepping closer. Where they help with meals, laundry. And there's people. Activities. I don't like you being alone here so much. I'm not alone, I said too quickly. Ruth stops by. And I have the book club. She didn't push it. Not that day. But a seed had been planted, and I felt it burrow under my skin like a thorn I couldn't quite dig out. After she left, I stood by the window and watched her car pull away. The smile I'd kept frozen on my face collapsed as the taillights disappeared. Down the street. The silence returned. But it no longer felt like mine. Later, I made a list of what she said and what she didn't. Her tone. The way she touched things in the house like testing their weight, their value. She'd looked in the study. I'd seen her glance linger there. That was the room she didn't have a key to. The cabinet was old, dented, fireproof. I'd bought it after Henry died. It held what mattered, passports, account documents, the deed to the house. A few other things too. Things not even Marissa knew about. I'd always trusted her. She was my only child. But trust, I was learning. Had layers. The next week, she came again. This time with Tom. They brought Chinese takeout and praised the garden. Tom hovered around the living room, complimenting the old record player, asking how the pipes held up in winter. Too many questions for someone uninterested in jazz or plumbing. During dessert, I caught Marissa slipping something into her purse from the mail stack. When I asked, she smiled innocently. Oh, just one of your insurance letters. I thought I'd scan it for you. I nodded, but the pressure grew heavier. Then came the day I forgot the kettle, only a few minutes. A scorched smell, nothing more. But Marissa latched onto it like a hawk spotting blood. You need to be careful, she said, eyes wide. You could have burned the whole house down. I'm not losing my mind, I snapped. I didn't say that. But her voice dropped to a whisper, the way people speak around infants or bomb threats. Just, maybe we should schedule a checkup. For peace of mind. I agreed. Just to end the conversation, that night, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood in front of the cabinet for a long time. Its steel frame was cold beneath my fingertips. I checked the lock twice. Then a third time. I thought of Marissa's fingers. Quick and delicate, folding insurance letters into her purse like they belonged there. I thought of the way Tom examined the hallway light fixture. Of how my words seemed to echo more and more when I said them aloud. Then I looked around the house. My house, everything was exactly where I'd left it. And yet, something felt shifted. Like the walls had leaned closer. Like the shadows had ears. From the hallway, the grandfather clock chimed 8. I turned off the light, but as I walked away, I couldn't stop myself from glancing back, not at the garden. Not at the front door. At the cabinet, and I felt the faintest tremor of doubt bloom in my chest, something I hadn't named yet, but would someday call the beginning. I'd started writing things down, not grocery lists or birthdays, real things. Slippery things. The kinds of moments that tend to evaporate when people like Marissa tilt their head and say, "Are you sure, Mom?" So I kept a notepad tucked behind the spice rack. Dates. Times. Voices I overheard. Expressions I didn't like. I wrote them in red pen, my quiet rebellion. My proof, and that morning, the red pen nearly tore through the page. Basement. I called from the porch, frowning. At the sound of muffled clanking below my feet. Tom's voice drifted up like it didn't quite belong there. Water heater. Marissa said you mentioned a noise. I hadn't. Not to her, not to anyone. The spade slipped from my gloved hand and thudded against the soil. I stood, brushing dirt from my knees. The tomato vines leaned toward me like witnesses. I waited. 15 minutes passed. No more banging. Just the soft, unmistakable thud of a cabinet drawer sliding shut. I stepped inside, garden boots leaving smudges across the tile, and peered through the kitchen window that overlooked the driveway. Marissa's car wasn't there. Just Tom's silver Subaru, parked too close to the garage door. He came up the basement steps shortly after, wiping phantom sweat from his brow with a handkerchief that looked too clean. All good, he said. Cheerfully. Just some sediment. Nothing to worry about. I gave a tight smile and didn't offer tea. He lingered. Mentioned how interest rates were climbing. How the market was shifting. How houses our size might not stay hot forever. I'm not selling, I said, voice flat. Tom raised his hands. Of course not. Just thinking ahead. No harm in that. I watched him leave, then bolted the front door behind him and stood very still. The house was quiet, but the quiet had changed. Later that evening, I pulled the chair from the study desk and slid aside the braided rug that covered the floorboards. My fingers found the groove beneath the third plank. The key emerged from its hollow with a small sigh of dust. The cabinet waited in the corner, squat and solid, its paint scuffed from decades of moving. I'd kept it locked for years. Never needed what was inside. Until now, the key clicked into place. The lock turned. Inside. Rows of labeled folders. Wills, current and outdated. Bank statements from accounts Marissa didn't know existed. A separate checkbook for the small trust Henry and I had established in the early 90s, meant for emergencies or something less definable. I flipped past them until I found a sealed envelope, yellowed at the edges, only if betrayed. Henry's handwriting. Sharp, decisive. I didn't open it, not yet. Instead, I reached for another file, one marked simply Roger. I hadn't spoken to him in 6 years. Not since we'd argued over his decision to retire early. But Roger had been Henry's most trusted advisor. A former securities lawyer turned quiet fixer. The kind of man who didn't advertise, but always answered when it mattered. And below his old business card, I found a single typed page. A summary of a dormant legal protocol, redistribution of assets, transfer of titles, power of attorney overrides under specific triggers. All buried, all unused, all still valid. I made a note on my pad. 6:47 p.m., Tom snooping in basement. Noted. Cabinet tampered, drawers off by 1 inch. 7:21 p.m., reopened cabinet. Envelope untouched. Roger contact sheet still current. I paused, then added, begin reactivation protocol? But I didn't call yet. Not that night. Instead, I took my tea out to the back porch and sat under the soft buzz of the mosquito lamp. The garden had gone still, as if even the plants were holding their breath. Somewhere next door, Ruth's dog barked twice and fell silent. Ruth. I should have called her. She'd always had a good nose for rot, be it in the soil or in people. I remembered the last time she visited, the way her eyes narrowed when Marissa offered her that too wide smile. "Your girl's clever," she'd said, once Marissa had stepped out. "Too clever. Watch your blinds, Eleanor." I hadn't listened then, but I was listening now. The next morning, Marissa came by again, alone this time, dressed in soft beige and lip gloss, like she wanted to look maternal on camera. "She brought a photo album. I thought we could go through some old memories," she said, setting it beside my tea. "You know, in case we ever need to make decisions about, well, legacy things." Legacy things. My fingers tightened around my mug. She flipped to a page with my wedding photo. Me in satin, Henry looking proudly awkward. "You were so beautiful," she whispered. "Then, did you ever redo the will after Dad passed?" I said nothing. She tapped a manicured nail on the corner of the page. "It's just, Tom and I are trying to plan better. It helps to know where things stand. Mortgages are no joke right now. And you, well, we just want what's best for you." I looked at her then. Really looked. Her pupils didn't move. Her tone didn't crack. But something in her, some muscle just beneath the surface, twitched. I nodded slowly. "I'll look into it," I said. That night, I opened the notepad again and underlined Roger 3 times, then I flipped to a clean page and wrote a title I never thought I'd need. "If you find me gone." I didn't know yet what the ending of that letter would be, but I knew who I needed to call. The envelope pressed against my ribs like a heartbeat as I crept down the corridor, wrapped in the cardigan I'd worn to dinner. I hadn't dared open it in the office. Not with the hum of fluorescent lights and the dull-eyed security monitor blinking just above the file cabinet. Now, back in the room, I pulled the blanket over my head and slid the envelope free. My roommate wheezed in rhythm, oblivious beneath a mountain of quilts. The air smelled faintly of lavender spray and liniment. I held my breath and tore the seal. Inside, a brittle fold of yellowing paper, a list of names and numbers typed on an old IBM ribbon printer, the ink slightly faded but still legible. A post-it clung to the corner, Henry's handwriting slanted and unmistakable. "If you're reading this, it means something went very wrong." My throat tightened and behind the list was a single typed page, signed, dated, notarized nearly 8 years ago. A legal directive. My godson Roger, named as emergency proxy in the event of undue influence, coercion, or elder abuse. Activated upon written request or credible verbal distress, if I could not otherwise act. I hadn't spoken to Roger in years. Not since the wedding, when he told Marissa that real estate flipping wasn't a career, and she told him never to come back. I ran my fingers over the embossed seal at the bottom of the page. My hands shook, but not from fear anymore. There was a third item in the envelope. An index card, scrawled with old bank routing numbers and an access code. The final line, "Use the blue phone." It took me a moment to realize what that meant. The staff break room. I'd passed it during orientation, the door propped open briefly while Janet fetched gauze. I'd glimpsed the ancient microwave, the instant coffee packets, and an old corded phone mounted next to the fridge. A plastic handset the color of oxidized sky. I checked the time, 9:38 p.m. Shift changed. I waited 5 more minutes. Counted 60 breaths, then slipped the envelope into the lining of my robe. My roommate grunted once in her sleep and turned over. I moved like a shadow. The hallway was dim, the only light coming from the glow of the vending machine. I padded past the nurse's station, silent as a ghost. The break room door was ajar. No voices inside. I slipped through, shut the door quietly, and lifted the receiver. The dial tone buzzed against my ear, steady and strange. My fingers dialed the number from memory. It rang once. Twice. Then, "Eleanor?" His voice hadn't changed. Still clipped, a little dry, like parchment that crackled just before tearing. I exhaled. "Roger. I'm at Glenvale." A pause. "The senior home?" "Not by choice." "Jesus. What happened?" I swallowed. "Marissa. She invoked the POA. She said you were ill." "I'm not. My voice cracked. "I was tricked." Another silence. Then, "Tell me everything." In 3 tight sentences, I did. The checkup lie. The confiscated phone. The envelope. "I have the proxy letter," I said. "And the accounts. Still with Barclays?" "Yes. The London routing, plus the offshore fund Henry opened for emergencies. I think Tom found the cabinet. He was snooping 2 weeks ago." A long breath on the other end. "Do they know about Roger's clause?" "No. Henry never told them. We buried it in a trust." "Good." I could hear keys tapping. "I'll initiate the verification. If they moved anything, I'll see it." "Do you have access?" "I do now. Use nothing electronic. No calls from your own phone. Don't sign anything." "I already did." "Then stop." The break room light buzzed faintly above me. I pressed my hand against the table to steady myself. "There's more. I think Glenvale's not what it seems. Janet's kind, but the others, they watch. And I saw a man here earlier." not staff. Talking to the director behind closed doors. Roger's voice dropped an octave. What man? Tall. Graying. Thin lips. Italian shoes. Looked like he'd never visited a nursing home in his life. Did he have a ring on his index finger? I froze. Yes. Roger's fingers stopped typing. That's Luca Ferranti. He whispered. He owns Horizon Equity. So? Horizon owns Glenvale. And Tom worked with Ferranti on a series of silent property conversions 2 years ago. Nursing homes, mostly. They privatize the care staff, reduce medical services, increase rent, and flip the buildings when occupancy drops. The room spun. He's monetizing my life, I said quietly. Roger's voice was steady now. Sharp. Eleanor, listen. You're not crazy. You're not imagining this. This is a pattern. I've seen it before. My eyes burned. I didn't want to believe they do it. Marissa, I mean. I know. But that's the point of slow abuse. It wears the shape of care. Something shifted inside me then. Like a rib unlocking from cartilage. Like something ancient snapping into place. I reached into the envelope and ran my thumb over the bank codes again. I can fight this, I whispered. You don't have to alone. A pause. Then, you were right. I found something. I'm coming. The difference was subtle. That's how you knew it was malicious. Roger had 4 documents spread across his dining table. The original notarized power of attorney I'd locked away, the revised copy Marissa submitted to Glenvale, and 2 public filings pulled from the county recorder's database. The signatures looked similar, but not quite. My name curved differently in the middle, and the date next to it was off by 3 weeks. The notary's stamp was a cheap scan, not the embossed seal used in my version. And the witness line, blank. Roger sat back, arms crossed, jaw clenched tight. The morning sun filtered through his half-drawn blinds, landing across rows of legal pads scrawled with notes and flagged terms. Loopholes. Violations. Fraud. He didn't speak at first. Just stared at the papers as if willing them to admit what they were. Forgery. I had trusted her to handle groceries, mail, small bills. Not this. Not legal erasure dressed as guardianship. He opened his laptop and typed a string of searches. Marissa Thatcher, Tom Thatcher, Horizon Equity Partners, Ferranti Holdings. Then a different one, Glenvale contract override clauses. A clause caught his eye, buried in the fine print. Should medical or legal incapacity be determined by independent counsel, the terms of power of attorney are considered void pending review. His mouth curled at the edge. A small, lethal smile. Meanwhile, back at Glenvale, I perfected the art of stillness. I smiled at the aides. Ate the pudding. Let them adjust my slippers. I nodded during the memory game, faked a laugh when another resident made a wandering comment about the nice weather during a thunderstorm, but inside, I was watching. Recording. Janet was the only staff member who met my eyes when she spoke. I marked that down. Orderly Kevin walked too quietly down the hall. The cameras weren't hidden, just lazy, fixed and outdated. One near the dining hall blinked out every 12 minutes. Another in the west hallway had a 30-second audio delay. I counted them out like rosary beads. I stopped asking for my phone. That would tip them off. Instead, I borrowed a pencil from the activity bin and kept my notepad hidden beneath my mattress. Roger called again that afternoon. I slipped into the break room during movie hour, just long enough to say, "Don't use names." "Is it real?" "Yes," he said. "They filed a forged POA in May. County records backdated. Witness signatures missing. I found a version notarized by a man who died in March." My mouth went dry. "And the siphoning?" "6 withdrawals from your Barclays account. Tom's name on the proxy authorization. They used your login once. From your own IP, the day you were sedated for your dental procedure." I remembered the haze. The pulse oximeter. The forms Marissa slid in under the anesthesia curtain, saying, "Just sign these, Mom, it's about billing." I nearly threw the phone across the room, but I didn't, because I was no longer a pawn on their board options. I asked, jaw tight, "I found a clause in the Glenvale contract. Buried. It lets us nullify the POA if elder abuse is suspected and an independent evaluator signs off. But we'll need evidence. Video, testimony, contradictions. Your word isn't enough yet. They won't let you in here." "Not yet." The line went quiet. Then, "Send me a sweep. Rooms. Camera angles. I'll map blind spots. We'll start there." I hung up with my pulse pounding against my spine. Back in my room, I lay on the bed like always. My roommate muttered in her sleep, chasing someone through her dreams. I waited until nightfall, then made my round, to the activity room, the nurse's station, the east hall, and back. I counted steps. Noted lens positions. Let the cameras see what I wanted them to, but I didn't let them see the note I slipped under Janet's clipboard during her rounds. She found me sitting up in bed later, eyes open, What's this?" she whispered, holding the folded paper. I looked her dead in the eye. "If someone comes asking for me," I said, "tell them nothing. And don't trust the files." We sat across from the lawyer like co-conspirators. Henry's fingers were laced over his knee, calm and still, but I knew better. The vein in his temple was twitching. That only happened when he was trying not to rage. I stared at the paper between us. My name. His name. And a clause that looked like it belonged in a spy novel. "If I'm ever committed without my full, lucid consent," I read aloud, "this clause triggers full transfer of trust control to the emergency proxy, Roger C. Brandt, and opens access to litigation reserves." I looked at Henry. "You think it could really come to that?" He didn't answer right away. Just met my eyes, firm and clear. "I think Marissa loves control. And she loves money. If you live long enough without me, she may try to claim both." That silenced me. The lawyer, a gray-bearded man named McTeague who used to golf with Henry on Wednesdays, tapped the edge of the paper with a knuckle. "It's airtight. Time-stamped, double notarized, physically stored in 2 locations. If this clause is activated, Roger has full legal authority to move assets, contest power of attorney, and engage litigation with the backing of the trust. Without waiting for a court's blessing. But won't she find a way to block it?" "She won't even know it exists," Henry said. He always had that way of speaking, like truth was a weight, not a sound. McTeague slid over the rest of the papers. One for the safety deposit box downtown. Another to be held in a private vault we leased under a dummy LLC. Roger had access credentials to both. A copy of the biometric scan for the vault was done just last week. Henry's thumbprint, my retina. I watched him sign the final page and slide it to me. My hand didn't shake. "Marissa will never believe I would do this," I said. "That's the point," Henry replied. "She'll never see it coming." The office smelled of old wood polish and ink. A storm tapped at the tall windows, and the clock behind McTeague's head ticked too loud, like it was in on the plan. We walked out of there lighter and heavier all at once. Afterward, over black coffee at the corner diner we always liked. Henry folded his hands over mine. "She's our daughter," he said. "But that doesn't mean she sees you as a person. She sees you as a path." "To what?" "Comfort. Power. Prestige." I wanted to argue, but I'd heard it in Marissa's voice too often, the edge of impatience when I asked her to slow down, the sigh when I said I'd pay bills with a check. She loved me, but in the way some people love old furniture, too bulky to get rid of, too inconvenient to maintain. "Why Roger?" I asked. Henry didn't hesitate. "Because he doesn't want anything from you. And because he's sharp." I thought. Tech-savvy. Loyal. And not afraid of Marissa. We watched rain smear the outside of the diner's window. "What if I never need it?" I asked. "Then it sleeps," Henry said. "But if she tries, if they try, it wakes." I thought of that day often in the 2 years that followed. After Henry died, I visited the safety deposit box twice a year. Just to make sure. Just to feel the steel edges of that protection still sitting in the dark. And now, as I sit in this nursing home pretending to forget things I haven't, playing the part of the fading widow, I remember that conversation in perfect clarity, because it's no longer theoretical. It's happening, and that trust clause, it's awake. Roger leaned against the side of his car, eyes scanning the Glenvale entrance through tinted sunglasses. The documents from the deposit box sat in a sealed envelope in his glove compartment, untouched since retrieval, but burning like kindling. He'd read every line twice. The signatures. The bank links. The clause Henry had drafted with the cold precision of a man who'd already buried one career and didn't intend to bury his wife's autonomy with it. The beauty of it was in its simplicity. Eleanor hadn't needed to remember everything. She'd only needed to remember enough. And the envelope she'd opened that first night, it had all the breadcrumbs. Roger exhaled slowly. Glenvale's parking lot buzzed with the whine of early sprinklers and the low churn of HVAC units overhead. A nurse stepped outside for a cigarette, her badge swinging from her lanyard like a flag in low wind. He checked his phone. 3 texts from his paralegal confirming the timestamp match. 1 email from a forensic accountant. Funds moved from Eleanor's legacy account to Horizon Shell Corp via internal transfer, clearly linked to Tom Thatcher. Legal exposure high. Recommend immediate response. He closed his eyes, then opened the door. Inside, I waited. I could feel it building. The clause had teeth, but it still needed breath. Still needed someone to blow the whistle loud enough for the walls to crack. That would be Roger. I could almost hear Henry whispering from the past, "Let her underestimate you. That's how you win." Nurse Janet passed by with a clipboard. "Morning med soon," she said. I nodded. Calm. Steady, then leaned forward and whispered, "If someone comes asking for me, tell them nothing. And don't trust the files." I saw him before anyone else did. Roger stepped through the front doors of Glenvale like he belonged to the air inside it. Confident, clean-cut, blazer rolled to the elbows, a canvas satchel hanging from one shoulder. He walked like he wasn't afraid of being watched, and maybe he wasn't, because this time, he had paper. Proof. Teeth, the receptionist glanced up. Visiting? Nephew, Roger said smoothly. Eleanor Thatcher. She didn't question it. Not with that voice. Not with the way he smiled, sharp, polite, and slightly rushed like every professional with a purpose. I was already waiting. In the lounge, playing the part of docile elder, blanket over my knees, crossword abandoned in my lap, when his eyes met mine, something in my chest unclenched. I hadn't seen him in person since Henry's funeral. He looked older now. Better. In some ways. Like life had stripped away the soft layers and left only function that we didn't embrace. That would have drawn attention. But his hand brushed mine when he Saturday, got it all, he murmured, and I knew he meant the files. The claws. The history. We'd buried just deep enough. We kept it quiet until visiting hours ended. Then, when the last shuffleboard match was called and Janet waved goodnight with a look that said I know but I won't ask, Roger stood and said, "We'll be in the administrator's office. She's expecting us." She wasn't. But she would. Roger led the way, never looking back. The satchel thumped softly at his side. Ms. Willoughby, the administrator, looked up from her desk with the polite exhaustion of someone who lives her life inside incident reports. Her eyes flicked to me, then to Roger. "Can I help you?" Roger opened the folder. "You accepted this document as valid power of attorney." "It's not." He slid it across the desk. Willoughby blinked. "That's the Thatcher file." "It's also a forgery." Her mouth parted slightly, but she didn't touch the paper. Roger continued, voice steady and professional. "Notarized by a man who was deceased at the time of signing. Witness line blank. Filed 6 weeks after Eleanor was hospitalized and administered sedatives for a minor dental procedure." He opened another folder. "Here's the authentic POA. Timestamped 2 years earlier. Unrevoked. Supported by the Thatcher Estates Independent Counsel." Willoughby's expression didn't change. But I saw her hand tighten around the pen on her desk. Roger leaned forward slightly. "Your facility accepted a fraudulent document as legal authority to detain and manage a patient's life. That opens you to negligence, conspiracy, and elder abuse liability under state statute." Willoughby stiffened. "We verified the documents submitted by her daughter, who had a financial interest in removing her autonomy," Roger replied coolly. "Which brings me to the next point." He slid a third paper across the desk. "This is a temporary injunction filed this morning against the refinance of a secondary property using Ms. Thatcher's equity. Tom Thatcher, Eleanor's son-in-law, used his administrative access to divert funds from an account Marissa never disclosed. We have transaction logs." At that, Willoughby finally paled. Roger stood. "We're not suing Glenvale," he said. "Not yet. But you will conduct an internal review of all documents relating to Ms. Thatcher, freeze any changes to her care plan, and permit full third-party legal review of her intake and custody documentation within 72 hours. Any deviation, and my office proceeds to file." Willoughby swallowed. "Understood." Roger nodded once. "We'll expect cooperation." He turned and walked out. I followed, heart pounding not with fear but with something I hadn't felt since Henry died, victory, even if just a small one. Meanwhile, across town, Marissa's world cracked open. The knock on her office door came just before lunch, loud, official, impatient. She opened it mid-sentence on a call with Tom, expecting a delivery. Instead, she was served. 2 men in gray suits. One held a clipboard. The other handed her a folded stack of legal papers and said, "You've been named in an injunction regarding financial misconduct and elder coercion. You'll need to respond by end of week." Her hand trembled. Just slightly. She closed the door before anyone could see. "Tom," she hissed into the phone. It started. Across the line, Tom said nothing for a moment. Then, "She found a lawyer?" "No," Marissa said. "She found Roger." Back at Glenvale, I sat across from Roger in the visitors' lounge, our voices low. "They'll come at you sideways now," he said. "Smiles, sympathy, late-night chart reviews. Don't sign a thing. Don't agree to anything verbal. And keep your coded messages coming." I nodded. "What's next?" He looked down at his notes, then back at me. "Next step's public," he said softly. "They won't like that. What would you tell other families in your situation?" The microphone was off camera, but the question felt as intimate as a whisper. I looked past it, to the quiet curve of Susan's eyes, her pen tapping once against her notepad, her breath held like she didn't want to interrupt mine. I paused. "Not for drama, but because this was real." Finally, I said, "Don't wait for someone to believe you. Start with believing yourself." The room went still. The camera light blinked off. Susan smiled, not a grin, not the empty flash of anchors, but something gentler. "That'll air anonymously," she said. "Just as we agreed." I nodded. The others, were they willing? Her voice softened. For families so far. All with similar patterns. Sudden commitments. Rapid account changes. And one resident who hasn't had a visitor in over a year. That landed in my chest with a dull thud. You're not the only one, she added. No. I said. But I might be the first to say it out loud. Roger had made good on his promise the moment Willoughby froze the files. He began forwarding affidavits to the state licensing board and to Susan Doyle, an investigative journalist known for her tenacity and low tolerance for polite corruption. Within 72 hours, Glenvale's intake processes, billing structures, and residency waivers were under ethical review. A public hearing was scheduled. The phrase "elder coercion ring" appeared in a sidebar column of the Tribune by Thursday afternoon, and by Saturday morning, a clip of my interview, my voice altered, my face shadowed, aired just after the weather. Viewers listened, some wrote letters. A few, like a woman named Darlene, whose father fell down the Glenvale stairwell last fall, came forward with legal claims of their OWN.BY Monday. The court had subpoenaed the nursing home's entire intake file repository. They delivered a box to the courthouse, carefully redacted, precisely curated, but not carefully enough, because Roger's paralegal had already pulled the originals from the county's unindexed records. And the mismatches? They sang like sirens. I sat in the courtroom hallway that day, spine straight, palms pressed together like I was holding something fragile and fierce between them. I didn't wear black. I wore blue. My husband's favorite, a cross. From me, Marissa sat with her lawyer. Her face was flawless, makeup perfect, but her jaw trembled every few minutes. She didn't speak. She didn't look at me. Tom didn't show. His lawyer did. The judge hadn't ruled yet, but the room had shifted. I could feel it in the way people looked at me now, like I was real. Like I hadn't imagined it, like I mattered. Later that afternoon, Roger came into my room, phone still buzzing in his pocket. He tossed a thin manila envelope onto the desk. Tom's second home is under lien. Marissa's new LLC is frozen under suspicion of asset funneling. And the nursing board just suspended 3 Glenvale employees pending investigation. I exhaled. Did they offer a settlement? They will, he said. But not yet. They're still hoping we blink first. I leaned back in the chair. Let them squint. Roger smirked. You're good at this. No, I said. I'm just finally being seen. Outside, Glenvale's front lawn had sprouted a protest line, half a dozen people, most holding photos of parents, grandparents, loved ones, not screaming, just standing still. Susan met Roger at a cafe across from the courthouse that evening. She slid him a file across the table. Anonymous source, she said. Came through our tips inbox. But encrypted. Cleaned metadata. No IP trace. He opened it. Inside, a scanned agreement. A conditional reconciliation package addressed to E. Thatcher, marked private. It offered a private payout in exchange for silence. Roger frowned. Susan raised her eyebrows. Tom's lawyer? He nodded once, then slid the file back across the table. Next steps public, he said, voice flat. They won't like that. I stared across the table, unblinking. Marissa couldn't meet my eyes. She sat stiff in her seat, lips drawn so tightly they were barely a mouth. Tom fiddled with his tie, his cufflinks, his phone screen, anything but the air between us. The conference room was beige and overpolished, made to seem neutral. It wasn't. The tension warped the walls. To my right, Roger sat tall, calm. A quiet blade. The mediation lawyer, some soft-spoken man named Donnelly, cleared his throat. We're here in good faith to resolve. Tom cut in. I'll make it simple, he said. We'll repay the withdrawn funds. Sell the second home. Cover Eleanor's court costs. In exchange, the story goes away. He said it like a favor. Like I was being offered my name back at a discount. I didn't move. Roger didn't look up. Restitution doesn't erase fraud. Tom scoffed. It ends the bleeding. That's what she wants, right? She like I wasn't in the room. I leaned forward. What I want, I said, is the truth recorded. Not erased. Marissa shifted. Her nails tapped against the water glass, manicured perfection trembling at the edges. I waited. She finally spoke. Mom, this wasn't about hurting you. We were drowning. The refinance bought us time. If we lost that property, Ava's tuition, say it, I interrupted. Say what you did. Marissa blinked. I authorized the forms. But no, I said. Say what you did. Her voice dropped. I altered your power of attorney. There it was. On record. In front of 3 lawyers and the man I once trusted with our holiday lights. I did it to protect the family, she added, like that line would fold time around her and make it noble. Roger slid a folder across the table to Donnelly. Tom forged 6 bank access slips. They initiated transfers using Eleanor's biometric login while she was under sedation. We have timestamps, IP logs, and video of Tom entering her office with a copied key. Tom's shoulders tightened. You committed financial identity fraud and elder abuse, Roger said. This isn't about covering costs. It's about avoiding prison. Donnelly paled. Let's refocus. Roger continued, his voice even. Our terms are as follows: full reinstatement of Eleanor's original POA, immediate return of all assets, public apology submitted to the Tribune, and surrender of Glenvale's intake rights over Eleanor's residency status. Permanently. Silence. Marissa opened her mouth, then closed it. Tom said, that's not negotiation. That's blackmail. It's leverage, I said, quietly. The kind you taught her. I turned my gaze to Marissa. Do you know how long I blamed myself? Wondered if I was forgetting things, misplacing logic, slipping into fog. Her eyes filled with tears. Not grief. Exposure. I kept a list, I said. Not to fight you. Just to believe myself. I looked to Donnelly. We're not settling. We're offering a correction. Roger added, refuse, and the trial proceeds. We'll subpoena every transaction, every conversation, every contractor used to install surveillance in Eleanor's home office. Including the one Tom paid in cash. Tom stood suddenly, chair screeching. You have no idea what you're doing. Roger stayed seated. Sit down, or I add obstruction. Tom's jaw twitched. Saturday. Marissa's voice broke on the inhale. What do you want from me? I didn't answer at first. I wanted an apology. A real one. But more than that, I wanted my boundaries back. My name. My agency. The door she'd closed on my life. I wanted to pry it off the hinges and leave it on her lawn. So I said, I want my keys. My deed. And for you to stop calling yourself a daughter if you don't know how to act like one. The tears fell then. Silent. Real, maybe. But late. Roger folded his file, eyes on Donnelly. You'll receive the signed acceptance packet by morning. If it's not signed, we go public again. Donnelly nodded slowly. Tom's voice was hollow. You're killing us. No, I said, standing. You already did that yourselves. I'm just refusing to be buried with you. An hour later, outside in the hallway, Roger handed me my copy of the reinstated deed. The paper was crisp. Clean. Weightier than it looked. I tucked it into my purse like a shield. It's done, he said. I looked at him. Was I too cruel? Roger smiled softly. You were precise. We walked toward the parking lot, the hallway wide and bright. The wind outside rattled the hedges just beyond the glass. He held the door open for me. Ready to go home? He asked. You're home, Roger said softly, as the car door shut behind me. I stood on the front walk, keys in hand. Real keys, metal and weight and belonging. The gate creaked just as I remembered it. The mailbox still leaned to one side. And beyond the hedge, the house waited. Not spotless. Not new. But mine. The garden was a jungle. The tulips had bolted, the thyme had grown wild, and the roses had tangled themselves into the porch rail like they were guarding something. The trellis sagged slightly under a burst of wisteria that hadn't bloomed like that in years. I smiled. Inside, everything smelled of thyme and cedar and something faintly floral. Roger had sent a cleaning crew before I returned, but they hadn't scrubbed the place into sterility. My books still lined the shelves. The crocheted throw still slouched across the armchair. The house hadn't moved on without me, it had waited. Ruth appeared an hour later with shortbread and a thermos of hot tea. Her hair had gone a bit grayer since I last saw her, but her posture was as firm as ever. She didn't hug me. She just placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "Took them long enough." We sat on the back patio while Roger fiddled with the Wi-Fi router and connected my new phone. I added shortcuts, he called from inside. Banking, emergency contacts, Ruth's line, and the new security app. No more biometric logins. I called back, nope. Just your voice and your thumb. All on your terms. Ruth poured tea into chipped mugs that had survived 3 decades and 1 accidental dishwasher incident. I had the girls from Garden Club weed the front path. The rest we figured you'd want to do yourself. I do, I said. I sipped the tea slowly, watching the hydrangeas sway. They hadn't been watered in weeks, but they hadn't given up either. Like me. Later that night, I curled into my armchair with the photo album I'd retrieved from Glenvale before we left. I hadn't opened it yet. Not during the hearings. Not even when Marissa first dropped it off to soften her blow, but now, in the hush of my own home, I let it unfold. There was Henry, holding a snow shovel too big for his frame. Roger at age 9, standing beside a cardboard robot he'd built out of cereal boxes. Marissa in braces, arms crossed, already halfway to distant. I turned each page slowly. My fingers paused on one photo, Ruth and I in the garden, grinning over a mutant zucchini that looked like it belonged in a museum. That one, I removed from the sleeve. It went straight onto the fridge. Roger returned to the room with a folder and a glass of sparkling water. He sat across from me and opened the documents like a ritual. Final framework, he said. New POA, healthcare proxy, full will update. I nodded. Executor, he asked. You, I said. As discussed. He hesitated. Are you sure? Always was. I just couldn't say it out loud before. He nodded, eyes lowering for a moment. And Ruth's name is in his healthcare proxy? Top of the list. Ruth grunted from the kitchen. Damn right it is. We laughed. It was short and full and real. The envelope came 3 days later. Cream colored. No return address. Postmark smudged. I knew the handwriting before I even picked it up. Marissa. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. She'd had her chance for truth. For tears that meant something. For a sentence that didn't start with I. Just thought. I walked to the backyard fire pit, slipped the letter inside, and struck a match. It burned quietly. No drama. No ash on the wind. Just paper remembering how to disappear. Roger didn't ask what it said, neither did Ruth. On the 7th evening. I stood in the garden alone, shears in hand. The soil was still rich. My fingers knew where to dig, how to pinch the dead heads, how to coax a second bloom. This land remembered me. From the porch, I heard Ruth call, the teas steeped. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked back inside, sunlight washing my kitchen floor in honey and dust. At the table, Roger handed me the finished packet of documents. Everything's filed, he said. You're protected now. I took the papers. Signed the last page, then looked at him and smiled. I always knew I'd need the contingency.